This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for your company. Well, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has made a stunning claim that he's going to end the UK's failed open borders experiment. He says that without strict rules, the UK risks becoming an island of strangers.
So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
He also says it's common sense that if you migrate to the UK, you have to learn the English language. He's vowed to take back control of borders with new rules to maintain social cohesion and drive investment in the local workforce. And these comments from the UK leader may be welcome, but he's failed to set any targets, caps or numbers to really hold himself accountable, which means that he gets off the hook if his plan doesn't work. And he makes no mention at all of the migrants coming to the UK illegally, costing taxpayers £4 million a day on migrant hotels and accommodation. And there's the obvious question, does Keir Starmer believe in what he's saying like he says he does? Or is he a politician doing what he's now realised is popular? Of course, data shows that net migration to the UK has more than tripled in the past decade, yet it's only really now that he's ramping up his tough talk on immigration, when it just so happens that Reform UK, which has a net zero immigration policy and has pledged to deport all illegal arrivals, is surging in the polls. 3 Westminster polls in less than 24 hours have given Nigel Farage's Reform UK a significant lead over Labor. The poll from Find Out Now put Reform UK on 33%, Labor on just 20%, and the Tories on 16%. So isn't it interesting? Well, interesting timing that now Keir Starmer doesn't want to see the UK turn into a, quote, island of strangers. And this is the same person who made these comments in the past.
The United Kingdom is better because of immigration, and I think, if I'm honest, the Labour Party's been a bit scared of making the positive case for immigration for quite a number of years, and I think we need to turn that round.
So we have to make the case for the benefits of migration, the benefits of free movement.
Perhaps there's a Trump effect being felt in the UK, or Keir Starmer has found common sense and believes in strong borders. Or we're hearing these comments today because he's a politician who wants to keep his job. Joining us now is President and Founder at Strollmark, Hilary Fordwich. Hilary, great to see you again. I want to start with what's going on in the UK. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced sweeping changes to Britain's immigration rules, declaring an end to what he calls a failed experiment in open borders. And he's vowing to take back control by tightening rules for work, family and student visas.
That will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy and our country.
Hilary, a few questions about this one. Will people in Britain believe him? There's also the question as to what he's doing to tackle illegal immigration. And of course, there's a question about Reform UK. Is this going to help his chances against Nigel Farage?
Well, pleasure to be back with you again, Gabriella. I think this must go down in history, actually, as one of the largest flip-flops I can really remember. I don't remember a party completely and utterly, yes, going to their opponent's position. And to your very apt point there, really, he's basically running on the Reform platform. I think what it is that he's seen what has happened in the US. President Trump ran on closing the border. Of course, during his first administration, he had promised to build the wall. And then when we saw what happened, we all saw and witnessed what happened when the wall wasn't built. And the same thing has happened in the UK, but far worse percentage-wise, with these boats and migrants crossing the English Channel. Could you even imagine, Gabriella, you arriving at customs at Heathrow Airport and asking them where your free 4-star hotel is and where your free housing is and your free meals are and where you're going to move in 6 months. It's ludicrous. No one's ever heard of it.
And the cost to taxpayers is absolutely extraordinary. But just hours before this announcement by Keir Starmer, his home was targeted in a suspected firebombing incident, which is now under police investigation. What more do we know at this stage?
Well, actually, there were two bombs or fires actually on the outside of the property. No properties, no one was hurt. One was in Kentish Town, one was in Islington, and those are two former properties where he lived. Of course, Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, now lives at 10 Downing Street, but they're properties that he's owned and that he's rented. In fact, in front of one of them previously, some Palestinian protesters were arrested a little while ago. So what we know right now is just that those areas are cordoned off by the Metropolitan Police and they're under investigation. I haven't heard from any sources over there or read anything different or any updates, of course, because it's the middle of the night there right now.
Yes. Well, let's talk about this trade deal between the US and the UK. Donald Trump and his administration inked a major trade deal with the UK, and the deal keeps the existing 10% tariffs in place against UK goods while removing some import taxes on items like steel and cars. Let's just take a listen to Donald Trump.
With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade. The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access for American beef, ethanol, and virtually all of the products produced by our great farmers.
Now, this deal was the first trade negotiation signed following Liberation Day, where Donald Trump announced widespread tariffs. What do you make of this deal?
Well, of course, no deal is absolutely perfect, but both sides have benefited. That's why they both signed. Some very interesting things for the UK is that now Rolls-Royce parts will be used in the Boeing engines, which is great for Rolls-Royce, great for the steel industry, and of course the manufacturers and the workers in England. And then the UK bought many Boeing planes, so great for Boeing, great for US businesses. And then with regard to that beef deal, what's very interesting is that it actually is great for the US, of course, US farmers, and the UK is not going to be penalizing or hurting UK farmers because that's beef that was being bought from other countries. So it's not going to hurt the British farmers, which of course was one of the concerns. I think also there's credit due here to RFK because it's his pressure on the whole farming industry to reduce the use of chemicals, which is why this deal also went through, because with the reduction of chemicals, now they're accepting the beef. And also, as President Trump mentioned, their ethanol, that's a huge deal and beneficial, mutually beneficial. And I think for both sides, also 100,000 UK cars without any tariff coming into the US. So mutually beneficial, or neither side would have signed.
Okay, and there's also been a breakthrough in the trade war between the US and China. The United States struck a deal with Beijing after 2 days of negotiations in Switzerland. US Treasury Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer told reporters that the deal had been reached, and Donald Trump described the fresh trade agreement with China as a total reset.
In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs because they don't want to pay 25, 50, or 100% tariffs, so they're moving them back to the United States.
Hillary, you and I have spoken about the art of the deal on this program many times. Is that what we're seeing once again?
Yes, and I think that actually it's really amazing. You just really can't satisfy the left. They're saying, oh, President Trump is capitulating. And then when he imposes tariffs, oh, he's ruining global trade. I think it's very I mean, you can't please them. But I do think when you say the art of the deal, you're right, because what he had done is he's brought the Chinese to the table. Two other things that are very important with regard to this deal is the Chinese have re-agreed, which they did during his first administration, but then Biden let it go. They've re-agreed to stop the fentanyl manufacturing, because a part of this is a drug deal, stopping those deaths of Americans because of the fentanyl trade, and then also intellectual property. They steal American intellectual property. So those, Gabriella, are two very important parts of this deal. It is only a 90-day agreement, but I think that gives, as he said, President Trump has said, it gives both sides time to iron things out. And again, people can actually be pleased. The stock market, Gabriella, was absolutely delighted.
Absolutely was, reacting pretty quickly to that. Now, we've got to talk about Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has agreed to meet face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Turkey. Now, Zelensky wrote, "We await a full and lasting ceasefire starting from tomorrow to provide the necessary basis for diplomacy. There is no point in prolonging the killings, and I'll be waiting for Putin in Turkey on Thursday. Personally, I hope that this time the Russians will not look for excuses." Now, we know that Donald Trump encouraged Zelensky to accept Putin's meeting. Hillary, I suppose this is another significant step towards peace?
Well, it's a good step, yes. I mean, obviously, when any sides talk, and this is the first time they've talked since over 3 years ago when this war started. One thing that was very negative, though, was that Putin did make a drone strike on Sunday, just last night, again on the Ukraine. I mean, more deaths right at the last minutes. I don't think that that was helpful at all. I do think that President Trump is losing his patience, certainly with Putin, and Putin's showing his colors. I think you're right. I mean, it's hopeful. Let's be hopeful. That's all we can be. And Erdogan is going to be, from Turkey, is going to be the mediator here. So hopefully he can get them to come to some kind of agreement.
And there's been some good news coming out of the Middle East. The last American hostage held in Gaza, Eden Alexander, has been released by Hamas after discussions with the US over a ceasefire and a deal to allow humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip. Let's just take a look at those scenes. Cannot even begin to imagine the relief and all the emotion that Eden Alexander and his family would be feeling after more than 500 days being held hostage and finally being returned. Now, the US says that the release is expected to lead to negotiations for the release of additional hostages, and that's certainly another thing we can hope for, Hillary.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this whole situation has been beyond ghastly. I actually have to say, and I'm sure every mother, and you were very touched there, when you hear just the cries and the sounds, this shouldn't happen to any family, particularly in the circumstances it did. It was beyond ghastly. So yes, Hamas has said that they obviously are trying. They made this. I think that their statement said that it was a gesture to the US. They do want to obviously have more supplies go into Gaza, and they've really been pressured. And again, this comes down to, I think it was also Steve Witkoff has been over there negotiating. He's a tough negotiator, and he's got this release. And kudos to him. Kudos to the Trump administration. This did not happen under the Biden administration. They weren't working. I think it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And Hillary, finally, I have to talk to you about the Democrats, because former US President Joe Biden was back in the spotlight last week with an appearance on The View, as well as sitting down for an interview on the BBC. During his appearance on The View, he suggested that Kamala Harris lost the election because of her sex, and alluded to the fact that Americans must just be sexist and racist. Now, his appearance has ignited anger among Democrats who wish that the former president would just ride off into retirement and stay there. Many in his party are just desperate to turn the page on Biden's presidency, craving new leaders, fresh faces, as the Democrats just look to find a way out of the political wilderness. You know, what do you make of Joe Biden's appearance? I certainly agree with the Democrats that are not happy to see Joe Biden coming back and giving his 2 cents.
Well, you're absolutely right, but it's wonderful for Republicans. Let's bring Joe Biden back whenever possible. No, I think he should go back to the beach where he was during most of his presidency. But one thing that's very interesting, actually, some of the discussion I've seen, and I've actually heard from Democrats, and I have Democratic friends, and I know many on Capitol Hill, is that they actually are admitting and lamenting the fact that they don't ever get a chance to vote, that this is all like the elitists, the Democratic elitists give them the candidate. Hillary Clinton was never elected by the Democrats. She did not go through primaries. And it's the same thing with Kamala. And I think that is what is the saddest. Let the people speak. We're in a democracy. And no, the Democratic elitists give their members or their voters the candidate. And hence you've seen these disasters. They need to start learning their lesson.
Absolutely. President and founder at Stelmark, Hillary Fordwich, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to speak with you.
Absolutely. Pleasure, Gabriella, always.
Let's turn our attention to India and Pakistan. A ceasefire appears to be holding after the nuclear-armed rivals accused each other of violating the truce. Donald Trump announced a ceasefire at the weekend and praised the two countries for using common sense and great intelligence. This is the latest of what he had to say.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these. They really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop.
Joining us now is Professor Joe Siracusa, Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University. Professor Joe Siracusa, thank you for joining us. We just heard Donald Trump there saying he believes that this will be a permanent ceasefire. Are you confident that it's going to hold?
Good morning, Gabriella. No, it's not going to be a permanent ceasefire. These people have been at each other's throats since the partition of India in 1947. I think India has won 4 major wars. There have been a number of cross-border conflicts in 1999, 2001, 2019, in which the United States played a major role. Now, they are both nuclear powers, okay? That's why this is a very important story. It shows here that nuclear deterrence doesn't exactly work. They have a number of issues that have to be resolved, particularly Kashmir and the like. And, Gabriella, there's a reason why the doomsday clock, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, doomsday clock is 89 seconds to midnight, because these two powers can go at it anytime they want. Now, India is 11 times the military over Pakistan, and Pakistan acquired nuclear weapons for the same reason a lot of countries do, is the great equalizer. And they won't hesitate to use these things. And so, President Trump did the right thing, though apparently I understand his vice president said initially that this isn't our business. Well, actually it is our business, because if there is a nuclear war or anything that looks like it in South Asia, it'll affect the rest of the world for many, many years to come.
The conflict was initially triggered by a massacre of tourists last month in Indian-administered Kashmir. How can India be confident that there won't be another attack? And you mentioned the real concern of nuclear war. I mean, how quickly could this escalate?
Oh, well, look, this could go up the nuclear ladder very, very quickly. I mean, they probably would turn to tactical nuclear weapons. So, yeah, I mean, and there's no guarantee this isn't going to happen again. I mean, this Kashmir and that border, that control line there has been a burning issue for many, many years. And there's no guarantee that there won't be another terrorist attack. And now I understand that the Indian Prime Minister Modi has made it very clear that he will adhere to a ceasefire as long as there are no further aggravations. That is, there are no further attacks. So he may or may not be able to come good on that, but it really depends on the locals on the ground. This is a good example of how major powers get into things they don't want to get into because they can't control the people on the ground. Modi and the Pakistani leader have no control over the tempers that flare up at those levels, and they tend to overreact. Look, there are 9 nuclear powers. These 2 are armed to the teeth, and as I say, India would like to sort of crush these guys once and for all. There are 247 million Pakistanis, 1.4 billion Indians, so the Pakistanis are always going to rely on these nuclear weapons as the great equalizer. What about the irritants on the ground? Well, they can't do anything about that because these people have decided that this issue has to be resolved sooner or later. There's a famous line, Gabriella, by William Faulkner about, the past is not even dead. Well, in India, the past is not even past. I mean, these issues are as alive today, this Kashmir line, as they were in 1947. And the problem is that a lot of the wrong people are across the line because the British just drew a line and left the country very quickly. So a lot of these things are, sort of hangover problems. But look, this is in the war games, nuclear war games I participated in and I've read about over the past 50 years, the weakest link in a possible nuclear conflict comes from this part of the world. And that is the war games between India and Pakistan always sort of result in some kind of a war taking place. On the other hand, it hasn't happened since they've acquired nuclear weapons. And so that is a blessing for us, but it has to be watched very closely. And I'll tell you what, if something happens there, all the rest of the news items are just going to fall off the table because this is the #1 issue.
I want to talk to you about China. The US has struck a trade deal with China after days of negotiations in Switzerland. Donald Trump described the fresh trade agreement with China as a total reset. I mean, what's your assessment of the deal? Is it too early to be celebrating? It's, of course, seen as good news. What's your take?
Well, Gabriella, as a longtime advocate of diplomacy, I think it's a pretty good deal. They had a 16-hour conversation in Geneva. That is Secretary of the Treasury and his opposite number in China. And they decided to dial it down a little bit. These tariffs at 145 and 125% are now reduced to 30 and 10%. They're back to real world numbers. I think as a result of this, President Trump probably gave up a little more than he wanted to. I mean, he called for this sort of trade war to right a number of wrongs. He thinks that because the American economy buys more than it is selling, that it's on the short end of the stick here. Well, that's true, but it's also as a result of investment transfers and the like. It's not as simple as that. And to go to war with China on trade, I think, is very dangerous for this reason. And that is all trade wars, like sanctions and embargoes and the rest of it, poison diplomacy, everywhere else. And the Chinese leader, President Xi, is always fighting for his life. It's not like they hold elections every 4 years in China. President Trump wanted to prove his point, so he went high on the tariffs. And the Chinese, they took the bait and they bit back. And of course, this doesn't help the American consumer. And it also makes things very difficult for Australia. I mean, if Australia then appeases China on trade, the Americans will be all over them for contributing to this particular situation. And if they help the Americans too much, or if they agree to what America's doing, and the Chinese will hold them accountable. And of course, the problem with this trade war, or this tariff war, is that nations like Australia are stuck in the middle. I mean, as long as there are nations like Australia who are dependent on China for their economic survival and on the United States for their military survival, I mean, you can see that it's very hard to ride this road here, because or thread this needle, because Australia depends on both of them for very different reasons. But look, I'm glad to see it's down. It's a 90-day moratorium, so to speak. There's still going to be a lot of pain on the American and Chinese sides. A number of the companies have slowed down. The shipping in America has slowed down at these ports. It hasn't gone through, but at least we're not going to have long-term supply problems. And of course, could we have avoided this whole thing? No, I understand Trump's complaint here, and that is America has been taken advantage of. On the other hand, Americans, like Australians, they like cheap sneakers and laptops and dolls and pencils from China around Christmas time. So it's a very difficult problem to solve. And so I think we're back to common sense. And at the end of the day, the market tells you what you're going to do. I mean, if you're going to go against everything that your marketplace stands for, you're going to be in trouble. And in China, as people like to point out in some of your packages, that China's got problems with its cities, it's got problems with unemployment, has factories closing down, it's got property crisis, and the Chinese ain't that happy about life. And so these things make things very difficult. On the other hand, they could settle for a lot less than the Americans, because President Xi can force the Chinese to sacrifice a great deal more than President Trump, who only has 3.5 years to run, to ask the American people.
Professor Joe Siracusa, Dean of Global Futures at Curtin University, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Joining us now is Alex Stein, comedian and host of Blaze TV's Primetime with Alex Stein. Alex, great to see you. Donald Trump has signed an executive order that will reduce the cost of prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals by 30% to 80%. Now, Donald Trump made the announcement on Truth Social yesterday, saying for many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher in price than they were in any other nation, sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the same laboratory or plant by the same company. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or rightful answer. Now, Alex, this is no doubt going to make a big difference to families. How is the news being received over in the US?
Well, people are happy. I mean, we have a for-profit medical healthcare system that really only cares about making money instead of actually helping their patients. And so the fact that insulin prices are exceptionally higher in America than they are in Mexico, a country that I was just in, makes absolutely no sense. So it's not like we're asking for free healthcare. We just want the prices of the drugs that we all depend on to live to be affordable and to have caps on them and to make it so that we can live our lives and these companies can still go on their, 5-star vacations. These CEOs are still going to be wealthy, even if these drugs are affordable. So I love what Donald Trump is doing. It is obviously a step in the right direction. But sadly, our healthcare system is going to need a lot of work to actually, make it a system that helps people instead of just keeping people sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Donald Trump is reportedly set to receive a palace in the sky after Qatar's royal family pledged to gift the US president a luxury jet. The aircraft is also reportedly expected to serve as Air Force One in just 2 years' time. This is causing some controversy. There are concerns that he's accepting a gift from Qatar. It also feels a bit off-brand. He's someone who, of course, donates his presidential salary. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any concerns?
Well, obviously it is, a little bit of a quid pro quo. I mean, it kind of has to be. They're giving him a free plane, but I'm okay with it personally because we need a jet. But I think the bigger story personally is the fact that Boeing can't produce this plane. So now we have to take a plane from Qatar because the current 747-200, I believe, is over 30 years old. And this Qatari plane was built in, less than 15 years old. So it's just sad that Boeing, arguably one of the greatest American companies, not anymore, cannot produce the proper Air Force One for the president. So listen, it's sad that we're in this situation that we have to take the jet. I don't mind it. This is geopolitics. They want to get in good favor with Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants to get good favor with the Middle East and try to negotiate a peace deal, in the Gaza Strip. So listen, you got to play ball. It's a very nice gift. I think we should accept it wholeheartedly. And it goes to the Trump Museum. So it's really Trump's plane. So with all that being said, bring it on. As long as it flies him around the country safe, that's all I care about.
Well, Donald Trump has fired back at reporters who have questioned him on this, and he's also taking aim at the Democrats. He posted on Truth Social. So the fact that the Defense Department is getting a gift free of charge of a 747 aircraft to replace the 40-year-old Air Force One temporarily in a very public and transparent transaction so bothers the crooked Democrats that they insist we pay top dollar for the plane. Anybody can do that. The Dems are world-class losers. MAGA. I mean, he loves any excuse to take on the Dems. What do you make of this statement?
Well, I mean, he's absolutely right. What did Kamala Harris's campaign spent $1 billion and still somehow ended up $100 million in debt? The Democrats have no idea on how to balance a checkbook. So, them wanting to pay full retail for this plane, it just shows you how ludicrous these people are, and they're not based in reality. So God bless Donald Trump, the author of The Art of the Deal. And I would say in this deal, he just got a free $400 million plane. So I think he won this deal.
Look, Donald Trump has departed for Saudi Arabia, calling it a historic tour of the Middle East. His trip will include stops in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, with possible talks in Turkey on the war in Ukraine. What else can we expect?
Well, I mean, like we were just talking about, in the Gaza Strip, obviously Eden, the American hostage that just got released. That's a great step in the right direction. And it looks like Donald Trump is going to have to put his foot down and probably, make some deals that not everybody's going to be happy. Netanyahu's probably going to be upset, and, so Hamas, might be upset. But that's truly the art of the good deal, is that both parties walk away from the deal feeling like they kind of, got a bad shake. That's when you really get a good deal. And I know that doesn't make sense, but that's just the, cold hard facts when it comes to this. Both people, Hamas and Israel, they're probably not going to leave the situation happy. But Donald Trump needs to put his foot down and protect lives on both sides, because it's just a very unfortunate situation and nobody likes to see what's going on there. And it's just, Don, if anybody can fix it, and I don't know if he can because it is very complicated, it's Donald Trump, and I know he's gonna try his best.
Yeah, well, the achievements of what he's been able to do in just such a short period of time has been extraordinary. So I agree with you there. If anyone's able to do it, it's him. We've got to talk about the mainstream media, because we've certainly blasted CNN for some of their coverage, especially throughout the election campaign. But viewers have been left shocked this time around after a CNN host actually praised Donald Trump for his ability to essentially close the southern border. CNN's Phillip had this to say on the network.
Trump has succeeded. He has shut the border down. There are no border crossings virtually happening right now in this country.
Alex, is that some real news on CNN?
I mean, finally, I think that's the first time they've ever been honest in their 40 years of existence. I mean, CNN is obviously the liberal wing of the media. I mean, all they want to do is rag on Donald Trump. This is obvious. But when they even have to admit that Donald Trump is doing a good job, it shows you that maybe our country is healing a little bit. Maybe CNN is healing a little bit, and maybe they actually want to be, real journalists instead of just a propaganda wing of, all the liberals that want to make America not great again, and Donald Trump does, and that's why Donald Trump is so much better. And CNN, I think that they're going to have to continue to talk about Donald Trump's wins, because you can't hide it. I mean, you can only lie to the American people so much. I think that there was, they're mad that our country is literally healing, and they won't even admit it just because they have such severe Trump derangement syndrome. And Jimmy Kimmel was just on the news talking about how he admitted that he has this. So until they can get rid of the Trump derangement syndrome, I don't think they'll fully be able to talk about Trump in an honest way, but at least they're heading in the right direction.
Alex, I've got to ask you what's going on with Gen Z. It's been revealed that the majority of Gen Zs claim that they could form a deep emotional bond with an AI-generated partner and would even consider marrying one. 83% of young people born between 1997 and 2012 said that they could develop a meaningful connection with a chatbot. 80% said that they'd even consider marrying one if it was legal. Now, this is according to a poll by Joy AI. Are humans really that bad? I mean, what is happening with this younger generation?
I mean, I hate to admit it, but I do think human beings are that bad. I mean, you look at these dating apps the dating apps are so incredibly superficial. You're just swiping left and right for, the dumbest reasons. Maybe they have a Ukraine flag or, whatever reason, you're swiping left and right. So that's superficial. Now children are hypersexualized. So, people are just having difficulties creating relationships with human beings. So the fact that kids are going to lean on AI for future relationships, it doesn't surprise me. It's a scary reality. And I hope people aren't marrying robots. I mean, that would be very dystopian. And I think that would actually be a nightmare. But I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen, because human beings have just lost that ability to connect like we once could before this social media era. And it's sad, but this is a real reality that is probably going to happen in our lifetime, where even if people are doing it just as a way to say, to fight back against the system because they were hurt by a human being. Maybe they're in a bad relationship, so they feel that they have to turn to AI. So yeah, there's going to be people that use it, and it's like Black Mirror. It's literally like a Black Mirror episode coming to reality. Very scary.
So scary, so depressing, and I cannot believe that statistic. 80% of young people would consider marrying one. I mean, it's hard to believe, and sorry to leave it on such a sad and scary note, but Alex, appreciate you coming on Power Hour. Great to speak with you.
Thank you, Gabriella. Always appreciate it.
Time for a deep dive on all the entertainment and royal news. Joining us is Kinsey Schofield, commentator and host of the To Die For Daily podcast. Kinsey, great to see you again. There is so much to get into today. The federal sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs has kicked off today as opening arguments and testimonies began in New York City. Of course, we know that he's pleaded not guilty to all charges, but faces life in prison if he is convicted of 4 separate charges, including 2 counts of sex trafficking by force. Now, the first witness to testify at the highly publicised trial is Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Kinsey, can you bring us up to speed on what came out of the first day of the trial?
Yeah, absolutely. So Diddy's defense team acknowledged that he may have certain unorthodox sexual interests, calling him complicated. They argue that he may be violent and have a temper, especially when drinking or doing drugs. And he might even come across as a mean person. But they are stressing to this jury that he is not on trial for those things. So they, right off the bat, are saying, like, this guy is not a saint, but please try to judge him based on what he's being accused of legally. By the way, I worked with him. I had no problems with him. This is all very appalling to me as I watch all of this unfold.
Can you talk to us more about your time working with him?
Yeah, I thought he was very intimidating. He was a control freak, absolutely. I was incredibly fearful of him, for sure. But he, when I would do something wrong and I told him about it, he was grateful that I took accountability for an error. And, I had a pleasant experience with him, which is not a very popular thing to say today. But watching all of the behind the scenes and finding out that he had this secret life has been just really disturbing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing us up to speed on this trial. We'll continue to cover it in the coming weeks and months. Let's talk about Harry and Meghan. Prince Harry and Meghan have been brutally roasted on Saturday Night Live by Colin Jost during his Weekend Update sketch. Let's take a look.
President Trump also announced a new trade deal with the UK that will reopen British markets for American companies. All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two.
Harry and Meghan, it appears they have become a joke absolutely everywhere. How's the joke being received?
Oh, I mean, everybody thought that was pretty funny, except there's no way Donald Trump would agree to it, right? He would be like, it's the one that we all have severe questions around. No, nobody wants these two. If you read the comment section, everybody in the States is like, please take them back to the UK. I don't think that they have remotely any clue as to how unpopular they truly have become.
Well, there are growing calls to strip Harry and Meghan of their royal titles. The New York Post is reporting that locals in the UK say enough is enough, especially after Prince Harry's disastrous BBC interview, which aired hours after he lost his appeal for taxpayer-funded UK security. And a recent poll by The Express found that 97% of those surveyed believe that King Charles should strip Harry of his royal title. I mean, that doesn't really surprise me. What's your take?
I don't think that we'll see King Charles do this because he's not confrontational. I don't think that he likes the fact that he's been accused of racism towards his grandchildren in Omid Scobie's book. So I think he's going to continue to tiptoe around these two. But Prince William, you just wait until Prince William is king. I think he's going to put his handsome foot down and he is going to rock Meghan Markle's world. Meghan Markle is going to be humbled very quickly.
Well, I think Prince William will have plenty of support. We'll wait and see. But Kinsey, you recently interviewed a friend of the royal family, Hugo Vickers, who revealed the late Queen was so fearful of Harry and Meghan that she wouldn't want to be alone with them. Let's just take a listen to that interview.
I do happen to know that the Queen always used to make sure that she had somebody with her whenever she saw those two, for the reasons that we've been talking about, that they might be taking photographs or, I don't know, recording or anything they might be doing, you know. And she was, you know, very upset by the whole thing. And that's what I really find unforgivable. That, I mean, I'm a great admirer of the Queen, and I think she had a fantastic reign, as Sally was saying earlier on. You know, she should have been just floating into sort of sunlit uplands and sort of the glory of the Platinum Jubilee. And she had all these awful problems, and this was one of the biggest ones that she had to deal with. It's absolutely dreadful.
Also revealed that the King wouldn't want to be alone with them either. What more can you tell us from that interview?
That's right. Queen Camilla has to be there, the quote-unquote wicked stepmother, according to Prince Harry. Queen Camilla has to be in the room with King Charles. In the rare moment that he does actually see Prince Harry, we know today he's not even taking his phone calls, and it's all about trust. They excluded Meghan Markle from the Sandringham Summit because they were afraid she would secretly record the meeting and release it to the media. There is no trust when it comes to Prince Harry. And the picture he tries to paint with Queen Elizabeth, even saying during that BBC interview that the Queen wanted him to have this level of security, we're finding out the truth, and it's that she was bothered by them.
Isn't it interesting? Well, the truth comes out. And there's another major family feud brewing at the moment in the Beckham family. There are reports that the feud has been brewing due to tensions between Victoria Beckham and Nicola Peltz Beckham, who's the wife of her eldest son, Brooklyn Beckham. Now, Nicola and Brooklyn were no-shows at David Beckham's recent 50th birthday celebrations. And now insiders are coming out with what Victoria Beckham has been saying. What's the latest?
Oh my goodness, like I couldn't believe this. According to friends close to Victoria, she calls Nicola a viper and says she feels betrayed by her eldest son. Her friends talk about what a great sense of humor Victoria has. Like she's got incredible wit and she's very self-deprecating, but they said that Nicola isn't funny and isn't good on irony and makes a lot of jokes at Victoria's expense, calling her old and talking about how she's 50 and she can't believe she actually lived in the 1980s. I don't think I'd be able to deal with that very well either.
Kinsey Schofield, commentator and host of the To Die For Daily podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Great to speak with you.
Thank you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.